Okay, our next speaker is Matt Davis. He's the Chief Operating Officer for Horde Livestock, 29,000 sows in four different kinds of loose housing. So Matt, although he's got a fancy title, he's an on-farm guy. We were speaking on the way here. I picked him up at the airport. He's very much a barn guy, and I think we can learn a lot. He's got 11 years of experience with loose sow housing, and he's got 4 different systems running simultaneously. So please welcome Matt Davis.
Thanks, Tim. I'd first like to say thanks for inviting me up here to the committee. I will say that I'm not a well-rounded public speaker. I'm a big guy through and through, and so I don't have a ton of slides. I tend to talk a lot and not type everything out, and so I will say, Tim mentioned it, I understand the responsibility that I have, that I am the one person standing between all of you and what I'm sure is going to be a great lunch. I'm going to do my best to get through these 270 slides really quick here. Tim mentioned Horde Family Farms. So we are a family-owned operation in North Central Ohio. As he mentioned, we have 29,000 sows. About 75% of those sows today are in some form of pen gestation, and within the next 3 years, the balance of those, we have 3 farms remaining that are not in those. We supply all over, we breed, farrow, raise all of our own pigs, a complete farrow to finish operation. We don't buy any pigs in, we don't sell any pigs out as weaners. In addition to our swine operation, we also have a grain operation and a cattle feedlot as our 3 main areas of business that we work within. And so, as he mentioned, we've had sows in pens for going on 12 years now, and we started back in 05, 06 having the discussions of pen gestation. At that point, there was no mandates. Unlike Scott mentioned, we didn't have a packer wanting to pay us anymore for them. But we could see the sort of the writing on the wall that this pen gestation was a reality that was coming, and was probably coming pretty fast for us. And so we started to really spend a lot of time investing in research. At the time, there wasn't a ton of systems in the U.S. that was doing much with pen gestation, so it was a little bit hard to go out and take a trip and go see 3 or 4 different options. Just that option wasn't there for us. So as we started to research it, we reached out to a lot of the consulting vets that we use and have used over the years, and to get their ideas what they were seeing in different countries, and some of the conversations that the vet world was having on pen gestation. And that was what we used then to go in 2007 and build our first brand new pen gestation barn. And so I'm going to hit a lot on some new construction, some retrofit. We've retrofitted 1 farm, and then we've got the three other existing farms that we'll be retrofitting the next 3 years. And so we've continued to research and continue to learn. And so I did a talk similar to this 2 years ago at the Ohio Pork Council, and I put up pen gestation, and I made the comment that probably in our industry those 2 words have evoked more emotions, whether that's fear, anxiety, just a wide range of different emotions, over the last probably 8 to 10 years. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. As Tim mentioned, we do have 4 different types of pen gestation. I'll go into more detail of those that we use today. I'm not going to stand up here and say one is better than the other. I think all 4 that we use have a place. And as some of the other speakers have mentioned, a lot comes into whether it's a retrofit, whether it's a new construction, that kind of stuff. So I was going to do a quick little survey, and Scott beat me to it, that basically about half of the room currently has some pen gestation, which I think is awesome. I know last year when I gave this talk in Ohio, or 2 years ago, it was approximately about 10% of the current animals in the state or the group that I was talking to. So you guys are well ahead of the curve on that, in that regard. I will ask though, does anybody have any idea what 2036 means? What the significance of that number is? And I'll tell you, it's not a year, because I'm not a visionary. I'm not looking out 18 years from today. I'll tell you that right now. It's just not how I operate. So it's not the year. Any ideas what 2036 might stand for? Average size farm. That would be, that could be, but that wasn't what I was going for. It's okay.
Prosper dry cell space.
Another good one. You guys are coming up great. That would be realistic. Yep. I'll help you. I believe this is the date that you guys are mandated to be into pen gestation in your sow production in Canada. That's how many days from today you have to get there. So, if you're not a fan of pen gestation, you may want to focus on 2036, because that's a really big number. And but the reality of it is July 1st, 2024. And so, in the state of Ohio, we've got a little bit more timeline than that as far as the state goes. For us ourselves, because of our packer requirements, we're December of 2022 is our deadline to have everything into pen gestation. And so, so a lot of the conversations that we're having now, like I mentioned, we've got 3 farms we're going to continue to convert the next 3 years. And so our timeline would be that we'd be about a year and a half ahead of what our deadline is. And so the variations that we have at Horde Family Farms, we have an ESF Gestall, which Sylvan talked about a lot about this morning. We've got free access with Vissing Agro equipment in that location. Shoulder stalls or head stalls, Scott mentioned and showed his version of it. All of ours, we've not converted a barn yet into shoulder stalls, and so all of our barns that have shoulder stalls, and I've got pictures of each of these I'll show you, have been new construction. So they look a little bit different than what Scott mentioned. So same idea, just a little bit different version. And then we have ESF shower, and so so larger pens and single feeder per pen. And again, I'll show pictures of each of those. So these are our ESF Gestall, and so this was a retrofit, and so has already been mentioned numerous times. And I'll mention a little bit when I go into some more detail here. You sometimes your hands are cuffed a little bit on what your options are. You're not starting with a blank screen and you have dimensions of an existing building. This was a totally slatted floor that we went into, and so we did have that advantage. We didn't have solid concrete that we had to work around. But we probably, I think I know if we sat down with the Gestall people, our pen design is not what they would normally recommend. But when you've got walls and you don't want to tear those walls down, that's what you end up with sometimes. And so we run two feeders per pen, and we run 38 to 40 sows per pen. All of our pen gestation would be based right at 20 square foot per sow. Maybe a tenth or two over, a tenth or two under, but it's going to come in really close, right at 20 square foot. So our free access, so this is, like I said, this is the Vissing Agro model, and so I didn't hit a button, I don't. Nobody appreciates the IT guy until something goes wrong. I must have hit a lot of wrong buttons. While they're working on getting the picture back up, so the way that our free access stalls are set up, there's 2 rows of stalls, and they share that common back alley open area to where they can either be in the crates or in the stalls, or they can back out and share that community area. As mentioned earlier, that is the largest, those animals have more square footage than any of the others, because you've got the stall area, but then you also have to have the communal area where they can mix and have their true group housing. What we have found on that, and I'm sure they'll get the pictures back up when they do, the one picture showed basically a pretty well open common area and almost all the sows in their own stalls. That is a pretty common picture day to day. We do not lock the animals in the stalls unless we're doing a vaccine or something like that. But what we find is that 85 to 95% of the animals prefer to spend, if not all the day, the vast majority of their day within the stalls. And so that's, again, we've used it as a learning opportunity. You can see here, basically, I'm assuming that this picture was taken, I didn't take the actual picture, assuming it was taken when they drop feed, so everybody is in. But you can see here, this is a non-feeding time. I think there's one animal out here, and pretty much all these other stalls, they've chosen to go in the stall. And I think all of us in this room understand why a fairly large percentage do tend to like to stay in the stalls. So then shoulder stalls, so this is our version of what Scott talked about, what they're doing. And so here again, feed had just been dropped, and all of our shoulder stall barns that we've done so far have been 10 sows per pen. I'm familiar with, I don't know that 10, 12, 15, 18, 20, I don't personally know that there's a huge difference there. For us on 2,500 head sow farms, 10 just seems like a really nice number, and so that's what we've used. It fits our barn layouts when we're looking at new construction really nice. And so you can see here, this is the common picture. When the feeds drop, this is a very common picture. Once the feeding process is done, we do feed twice a day on our shoulder stall barns. We've tried different versions of that. We've tried more than 2 times a day, and farm staff seems to like 2, and that's what we sort of settled on. Although we challenge ourselves every once in a while, should we be looking at doing something different as far as the number of feedings? And actually, Tim challenged me this morning on the way from the airport that maybe we need to go way beyond what we've even tried and see what the results might be. So. The ESF shower, so this picture here on the left is actually a gilt barn, gilt training station, where the gilts, there was some mention earlier, Jennifer speak about, during her talk about, that's a consideration with the ESF systems, and so that's what that picture is. And then this would be a typical pen in our gestation barn, and very similar to what she was showing, a lot of sleep bays. I think those sleep bays are 10 or 12 foot wide. I think they're 7 foot in length coming out from the divider wall. And so that seems to work pretty good in our system. And this is probably fairly early in the day because there's still a lot of activity in the alleyway in the common area. As you go in there, as you see after noon and after, those pens are again 80-90%. They're in their sleep bays, they're laid down, and there isn't a lot of activity within the pen. So retrofitting to pen gestation, this is one of the things that I thought of as I was going through this was this quote: "Have no fear of perfection, you'll never reach it." Because I think when you really look at retrofitting a barn, whether it's a nursery, whether it's a farrowing house, whether it's a gestation to pen gestation, there is no perfect answer. And there's also no one size fits all answer. What works for you may not work for me, and my design may be different and have different limitations than what somebody else has. And so I just thought that was really fitting for the mindset of retrofitting. And Scott hit on that a little bit on his talk this morning. And so Some of these are going to be redundant. That's the downside of being the fourth speaker on the same topic. You know, as you go through it, total slat versus partial slat. Our opinion of that would be that depending if when you're looking at a barn to retrofit, that is going to be one of the big things that points you either this direction or this direction as far as what option should I be looking at. Plan for animals while construction is ongoing. I'm really want to talk to Scott more of, he mentioned that they basically worked with 3 pins and rolled those throughout the barn, because our thought has been from a biosecurity standpoint of taking and emptying a gestation barn so that we can shut it off from the rest of the farm and let construction crews, even if they are our own crews, go in and out from the outside versus showering in and trying to shower in all those supplies or fume in all those supplies. Basically seal it off, let the construction crews do their work, and then just wash, disinfect, and then open it back up. But in order to do that, you gotta have somewhere to take those 600 to 1,200 animals, depending on how your barn's designed. So obviously consideration. Post-implantation versus pre-implantation, again, it's been talked about a little bit. Obviously changes greatly where or what system you're going to go with potentially, but then also how much of a conversion. Are you converting roughly half of the crates to pens, or are you converting 85-90% to pens if you're going to do a pre-implantation? We have done everything we've done up to this point has been a post-implantation. Right around our goal is to move at that 40-day range. We've done within our large pen ESFs, we have done some pre-implantation studies, and actually the results have been very encouraging. And they're not big studies, and they wouldn't stand up to Jennifer's criteria of research. But we've done some fairly large groups, and we've been able to maintain furring rates the same on a pre-implantation study versus a post-implantation that we normally run. So that is encouraging to us as we talk through things. Reduction of available spaces, no matter what pen gestation system you go to, you're going to lose spaces. If it's 1,200 spaces now, it's going to get shrunk by some percentage. There's just no way around it, because as we go from 14 square foot plus some small alleyway space per sow to 19 and a half or 20, the math just doesn't add up. You're going to lose some spaces, so that is a consideration. Square footage requirements, again, we've just said 20 is our target, and as long as we're within a half of that either way, we think that's a pretty good sweet spot. And it also, we know that it'll work if we're at 19 and a half and we're okay cost-wise up to 20 and a half. You start looking at 22, 23, 24, and the cost really starts to impact that. And then a couple sort of beyond that is, so, you know, we've had the conversations, do we take a 2,400 sow farm that's fully crated, expand the site, so basically double it, make it a 5,000, and that's pretty close to the number of crates you would need, and then just make all the new construction pen gestation. Viable option. Gets a little, you got a site that's 25 years old, gets a little questionable. Do you go invest that money in half the site is brand new, half the site's 25 years old? But it is a viable option, maybe more so on sites that are maybe a little bit newer than some of the ones that we've looked at. And then bulldoze and rebuild. That may be, for certain situations, that may be the absolute right answer, the best answer, may be what makes the most sense. For us so far, I just mentioned 25-year-old, we look at a 20-year-old sow farm, and I think it'd be tough for us to bulldoze. We look at it and go, there's a lot of life there, and so that hasn't been an option that we've chose, but I know others that have. So those are the things that, as we've worked through the pen gestation, those are the things that we've talked about. So what have we learned? Quite honestly, production, we would say on all 4 systems, when you just look, whether you want to look at PSY or whatever metric that you use as a driver for your business, we would say it's the same. All 4 systems, so with that, all 4 systems that we use today work. as has been mentioned, I think probably by everybody that spoke today, they all have some additional costs in there, and they all have pluses and minuses. Some may be more upfront cost, some may be more maintenance costs long-term, some may be more feed costs every day, every week, every month. There isn't a right or wrong. Again, what works for us may not work for you, and what works for Scott may not work for us, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of different options out there. There's a lot of research being done, and from what I've seen, there's a ton of potential options to look at. One really big thing, and it's been mentioned also already, people are the key. And I know that, I think as an industry, we all know that, and that's, I think, whether we're talking pen gestation, or we're talking good finishing performance, or just good performance with individual crates. But I don't think we can say that enough. And when we're looking at how do we design a system, I think the people side of that has to be heavily weighted. And so the things that we found on the people side, correct mindset. So I've got a breeding leader that's been with me for 20 years. He's been a breeding lead for 12 years. For the first 8 years, I didn't know if he'd ever make a move into management and lead a department. He's done an awesome job. He's one of the most steady guys you could ever have. He's the guy you want in your breeding barn every day, because every day is the same as yesterday. It's just a nice, steady level. But I don't know if the guy could send an email. In all honesty, I do not know if he could sit down at a computer and send an email. So if I took him and put him on an ESF farm, it's not going to end well for anybody. We're not going to be happy. He's surely not going to be happy. And so you gotta have the correct mindset, and you gotta also have the correct skills. And so I've got another guy that has worked. He's been with me 10 plus years. He manages our large pen ESF farm. He's worked in all crated barns. He's worked in pens of 10. He's worked in the free access. He's worked in all the different various types of pen gestation that we have. And if I told him, you're going back, I'm going to move you to a crated barn, he'd probably quit, because he loves pen gestation. He's got the right mindset. He understands, yep, there's challenges, but he also understands the upside and the advantages to it, and some of those things that were mentioned earlier. And so it's having that correct mindset. The other thing is, another thing that goes with that is, there's going to be a learning curve. I don't care, take any of us, take the best breeding manager, best farm manager, there is going to be a learning curve when you introduce pen gestation. Keep it simple. So one of the vets that we've used for many years has told me hundreds, if not thousands of times, we don't need to learn how to run the triple reverse flea flicker play. We need to block and tackle and execute the basic X and O's really good every day, and good things will come. I think all of us as humans, we tend to make things more difficult than they need to be sometimes, and this is one area that you don't want to do that. Keep it to the basics. Make sure that we do the basic things really good every day with pen gestation, and really good things happen. The results are very encouraging and very good. And then continue to learn. So I mentioned I really appreciate being invited to come up here and talk. And part of it, I'll be honest, part of it was selfish on my part. I wanted to come up here and learn, because I knew what the topic was, and I knew that, again, this is something that's not going away. We live it every day on our farms. We're going to continue to live it. And so I was excited to come up here and have the opportunity to learn from the other speakers, learn from you guys. Half of you guys are already doing some type of pen gestation, and so that's the other thing with this. It'd been real simple to build one type of pen gestation and say, this works and we like it, and this is what we're going to do for the next 20 years, but we haven't done that. We've tried to continue to challenge ourselves and push ourselves and continue to learn, because stuff we're doing today is different than we were doing 2 years ago, and it's different than we were doing 5 years ago, and stuff we do 3 years from now in the future is probably going to be a little different than what we're doing today. You know, that's how we all get better, is never quit learning. And so with that, I believe I got us back on pace here, and that was my goal. And so, any questions here before we go to lunch? And I will be around the rest of the day. I'll be up here on the panel at the end of the day. And so, if you don't, I know I don't like to ask questions when I'm sitting on that side, so catch me at lunch or catch me at a break. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, I think we're going to take this opportunity to wait on the questions then, and we'll do it during the panel part, or you can catch them during lunch or at other times. So please thank Matt for his presentation.